Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Shrink Down. Thank you for listening in today. We hope you are enjoying the podcast. We just wanted to mention that if you have any topics that you would like for us to talk about, please feel free to email us at the shrinkdown, it's one word, .podcast@gmail.com, or you can DM us via our new Instagram page at the Shrinkdown, one word. Be sure to follow us so you can stay up to date on any upcoming episodes. We're also saving all of the faves that we share as well on Instagram. So check there. We'll be putting links up to all the things that we share. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the modern day phenomenon of keeping up with the Joneses, where social media has intensified the pressure to measure our lives against the perfectly curated images we see online. So, we're going to be exploring how platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook create an environment where it's really easy to feel like you're falling behind, even when you're doing just fine. So, from influencers showcasing their luxurious lifestyles to friends posting highlight reels of their best moments, it's really hard to not feel the pressure to keep up with the pace, and it's never been greater before than now, since we have all these different kind of platforms. But again, what cost is this taking on us? Like, what toll is it taking on us, and how can we kind of break free from this like constant comparison and this constant pressure? But before we get into that, and even before we start our 4 minute faves, Wilhelmina wanted to share an update on the movie that we mentioned. I think it was like podcast 2, so 2 weeks ago, called The Substance. So go ahead, Wilhelmina, and give us your update on the movie.
So my husband and I saw The Substance, this weekend. I will say that we both agreed it was a a good movie in the sense of lots to talk about. It, I think, is a timely movie, important movie, and we will never be seeing it again. It, it is made to make you feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
And it absolutely did that. So yes, it's Demi Moore. She's an aging fitness instructor and actress. I guess she won an Oscar in her character. Then she takes his substance. She turns into Margaret Qualley for 7 days. They each get to be each up like their own person. So the other one's just laying there while the other one's going about their day. And then basically Margaret Qualley, the younger character, keeps taking more time, which then ages Demi Moore to the point that she becomes this grotesque monster sort of thing. So by the end, I had to look this up. I guess the movie is technically it is called body horror. So
Okay.
so it's a specific.
Oh.
So it's like The Fly. Do you remember that Jeff Goldblum movie
Yeah.
back?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's where you're basically what is happening to your body. It becomes just this other thing that represents more than just what's going on in your body. So by the end, it is truly almost ridiculous. Like we were just like, oh wow, I get the message, but it is just very clear that this director, writer, I mean, she's upset. She's like, this is
Yeah.
ridiculous what women have to go through. And the men, Dennis Quaid plays this just revolting man. And he, of course, is at the top of his game and in charge. And he gets to be disgusting and revolting. Whereas by the end, when she is what she is, it is a movie meant for discussion and a movie meant to make you feel uncomfortable. And boy, it did that indeed. Demi Moore, amazing. Amazing.
Wow.
Full nudity, like full everything. So she just laid it all out there. I mean, it was
Definitely
an
worth a
intense
watch,
movie.
but not a rewatch.
Not the rewatch.
Gotcha.
Not the rewatch. And Terry, you should never see this movie.
Don't
Ever.
Didn't plan to.
No.
Thank you for the recap.
Interesting.
All right, so let's get into our 4 minute faves. Terry, why don't you kick us off and tell us what you're loving at the moment?
I am loving a type of bra, a brand some of you might be familiar with, called True and Company or True
I've
and
heard
Co.
that.
Yep.
They originally were typically available at Nordstrom's. I've always bought them at Nordstrom's, but then Target started carrying them maybe in the last couple years.
Yeah.
They are super comfortable. They can have cups or not, all smooth, no clasps. I even joke with my husband, no more clasps. I'm in the comfort era. And a little TMI. And so maybe easier for him.
Never.
Easier for him. And they call themselves life changing. And what I have found myself is when I open that drawer of my dresser, it's always those. And for a
Yeah.
while, it was 50% those, 50% something else, a different brand. And now the last couple months, it is 100% True & Co. bras.
Oh.
That is my
Terry,
recommendation.
is there a specific style you recommend that
I
you like
don't know what
love?
they're called. I have a
Okay.
couple different ones. Some are thinner and strappier.
Interesting.
Some are thicker and have probably a little bit more support because the band is thicker, all the way around, like the shoulder strap band and around. But yeah, I
Do
don't
you
know what
feel
they're called.
Do you feel like the original ones and now the Target ones are the same quality?
I do think the Nordstrom ones are a little better,
Okay.
but
Mhm.
those are the ones I grab more, but the Target ones do the
Still
trick.
good.
And definitely
Okay.
try them on in the store and see what size.
How it feels. Okay.
Very cool.
All right. Well, Amina, what are you sharing with us today?
Okay. Well, I am loving the new Netflix show Nobody Wants This.
I'm here
I
for
text-
it.
Yep.
It's good.
It's
It's
good.
so good.
Yeah.
So it's Kristen Bell and Adam Brody. Oh, Adam Brody. I have loved him since the OC. I mean,
Mhm.
Seth Cohen. Is there anyone cuter? So cute. So it is loosely based on Erin Foster, the Foster sisters. She created this show, and it's inspired by her real life romance with her husband. So Kristen Bell plays Joanne. She's basically, she does a podcast that is a lot about sex and with her sister. And then she ends up falling in love with Noah, played by Adam Brody, who is a rabbi. And of course, that gets complicated because he's a rabbi and she's not Jewish.
Mhm.
And the chemistry these two have together is amazing. Is it the first episode that ends with a kiss or the second episode? Oh, the kiss. I mean, that kiss was great. I was watching with my husband. He was like, that was a good kiss. I'm like, yeah, it was a good kiss. And what I really like about it is that she has a scene where she talks about her biggest fear is falling in love with a man and being too much for him, like being too, and it was so powerful. And I've certainly felt that because I feel like I can be a lot. And so being seen by the right person who sees you beyond just sort of the image you put out there is pretty powerful. That's what the show is kind of about. And it does it in such a cute way. The characters, and it is funny and it's hot.
Yeah.
It's good.
That's
It
great.
kept my attention.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys are all
Terry-
watching it. I need to watch this. I
Yeah.
guess it's one of those that I need to watch. I need to get out of my usual.
It's good.
Well, I read an article just this morning that said there's finally a new rom-com out there that's not a reboot or a rewatch for people.
Yes.
And so that was kind of the praise it was getting, was that it was finally something original that's not been done before.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And
All right.
Terry's stamp of approval holds her attention.
Yeah.
As my stamp of approval. How about you, Vanessa?
What am I sharing today?
Yeah.
So actually so I just got back from Cartagena, Colombia. On when did I come back? It was Saturday. No, well, I guess technically it was Sunday morning. It was late in the morning. But on my way down there, I watched a good movie, and I don't usually share movies and shows because I don't watch a lot of TV or shows. But I was on the plane and I watched a movie, and it was in my genre. So like I have shared before that I really like fantasy fiction. One of my favorite movies of all time was Lord of the Rings. Yes, I'm that nerd. My husband loves the fact that he can watch, like, I like all the like movies all the guys like. That's my jam. So I watched Furiosa. It's a Mad Max saga.
Yes.
It is so good. Have you watched it? Any of you?
No,
I have not, but I love her.
Oh, yes. So it's Anya Taylor-Joy. She was in Queen's Gambit,
I
which is
love-
also amazing.
Such a good
She
show.
So good.
was amazing. I mean,
Oh,
I was
interesting.
like rambling on to everyone in our group. I was like, "Oh my gosh, you guys got to watch this when you on the way back on the plane." And my friend's husband did, and he was like, "That was really good." And I was like, "I know, it was so good." So the original Mad Max was with Mel Gibson, and I think that
Mhm.
was it the 80s?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
It
so.
was the
Mhm.
80s. We were
Mhm.
kids. So I remember watching that forever ago. And then there was the other Mad Max that came out. I don't think it did as well.
But that
No,
wasn't that long ago.
like 4 years ago?
Yeah, like it was a couple years
Yeah.
5?
ago. Yeah, like
Okay.
Yeah.
and I remember watching it and being like, okay, like I think I enjoyed it in the moment, but I'm telling you, I don't know if it was her, the
Yeah.
story, her care. I mean, it was so good. And then Chris Hemsworth is in it. He's
Mm.
the bad
Ooh.
guy,
Oh,
and he
interesting.
has like you can't tell it's him because they put
Oh,
like the prostheses on him.
yeah.
I think they did his nose. They did something. It doesn't look like him. I only recognized him eventually because I was like, oh my god, I know that voice. And then his
Right.
wife Elsa Pataki is in the
Mhm.
very beginning. She has like a small, very small scene in it at the very, very beginning of the movie, and I was like, oh my gosh, that. Then I put two and two together. But it's
Yeah.
just a great action. Like if you like action movie, obviously this is like one of those dystopian, type of movies, which I also really like that
Yeah.
genre. It was just such a good movie. It was well done. The effects are really good. Terry, you might not like it because there is some gore, obviously. Like it shows you how like in the original you meet her and she has like a half robotic arm. So you see how that happened in this, and it's pretty
Oh.
Mm.
gory, but there's a lot of gore into it. But it's such a good movie, and her character development is amazing. It starts off with her as a kid, so you meet her as like a
Oh,
child.
I love that.
It's so
Mhm.
good, and it's just like so like there's just even though it's like this action movie and it's like this dystopian, it's like there's this like you see this like mother daughter bond. You
Mm.
see like it's got like that good trope of like your maid family, even
Yeah.
though and that's like there's so much bad stuff going on in this movie, like bad people. Like you see all these good people and how they and she is this one of these like morally gray characters. Like
Yeah.
she's got this good to her and she's got this like obviously she's done all these things too, so it's just such a good movie. It was good. So definitely that's my fave that I'm sharing today is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. It was really
Now,
good.
you said you had seen the other movies. Now, can you see this one? I saw the newer one that came out whenever it came out a couple years ago, but I don't remember it that much. Do I need to? Can I just
No,
jump in?
I think you can just jump in because like
Okay.
I've seen the other two, but I would never have been like, oh, those are my favorite right, like
They're
I
all
just
Okay.
so I
separate
don't think you need to,
stories.
because this is actually a
Yeah.
prequel, right? This is one of those
Okay.
movies where it's like
Oh,
like this is
yeah.
how she became who she is. You meet her in the other movies as an adult, so this is like how she became Furiosa. So
Oh,
I
Okay.
don't think you need to. And in fact, I was like, oh, I think I want to go back and watch the other ones now that I've seen this. And they did leave it kind of that very last scene. You could totally see that there could be like another one coming because
Okay.
it ends with this like little scene where you're like, oh, it could just keep going. So that it was really good. And I don't watch a lot of movies. I don't watch a lot of TV. I read a ton. So like for me to be like, watch this, like,
Yeah.
it has to be really good. So if you're
I
looking
love
for a
it.
movie
Love that.
that you could probably like your husband will like to watch too, I would say this is it. This is a good one.
Is this the Charlize Theron character?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, that's who she is. Yeah. But I'm telling you, I mean, Anya, she's
Oh, I will watch anything she's in. She's so good.
that's what I'm saying. I don't even
She's
know
so
if it's
good.
the storyline or her because
Mhm.
it's just so good. And they did some kind of like effect. Like in the beginning, it's clearly not her, but at some point, it's her face, but on like clearly like a young preteen body. I don't know how they do it with all the effects, but it's so good, the effects, that it doesn't look weird. Like you know how sometimes you're like looking at things and you're like, okay, this is weird.
That's
Like I know
CGI.
that's not what you look
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but they did such a good job that it looks like her like as a preteen. So I don't know if it's like they did something to her body or if it's like they changed the face and it's some kid. I don't know how they did it, but it looks believable. And like I said, you see her she comes into the beginning of the movie, she's a kid. She's probably like, I would say like maybe 8 or 9 in the beginning, and then you see her become, I would say like at the end she's like a young adult. Like she's probably like 18 is probably what I would gauge. So you see her across
Okay.
this like span of time, and you see her actually like growing up. Like so it's just really good.
I love a
It's
good
good.
origin story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a good one. So you'll have to watch it and tell me what you think because
I
you're the
will.
movie buff.
I will.
So I'm
I
telling
will.
you, and so I was talking about this with my friend's husband. And he's like, I can't believe this movie hasn't gotten more hype. He's like, it's so good. I was like, I completely agree. So
Yeah.
that's my share for today. Lauren, what are you sharing and what are you loving?
Oh, my Hoka running shoes.
Ah,
You
yes, yes,
guys,
yes.
so I know Terry, you're a runner, but I mean, we all work out and are active. So I just recently got my third pair, which is what made me think like, geez, I'm like, this is really consistent that I'm sticking with these. I was first recommended them by the orthopedic surgeon that did a foot surgery for me a couple
Oh,
years
that's
ago. If
right.
you
I
guys
remember
remember
that.
that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
As just really good for people that need that kind of like extra support, but still want to be runners and be able to have like full motion in their foot. And now buying my third pair recently, I realized like these are actually really, really good. They are, I think they look a little orthopedic. So I think they throw people off a little bit because they are super thick. But if anybody wants a really good running, walking, cross training type shoe, I would highly recommend the Hokas because, yeah, they keep away the foot pain, which is always a really good thing.
That
And
is.
they're really
Yeah.
light.
Oh my gosh, I love them. And they're getting better at colors and things like that. They're getting a little cuter. Not that I really care about that piece for my workout.
But it always helps.
But it's nice. I've got a cute little baby blue color. So, no, but they're excellent. If anybody's looking to try a different type of shoe than they normally would, I would highly recommend the Hokas. And they last a long time too.
And they do have cute colors. I got a pair
Yeah.
last year and I got like fuchsia. So
Yeah,
there you go.
they're getting there. Yeah,
Yeah.
less orthopedic, more cute. So yeah, that's that.
All right. So now that we've shared our faves, we're going to get into today's topic. We have had actually many chats about this topic in the past, in lots of different kind of contexts. But what brought this topic to the forefront today was an article that came out a few weeks ago about a socialite that actually committed suicide due to extreme financial debt. At least that's what the assumption is based on a note that this person left. This is obviously an extreme, example of how social pressures can impact someone. But I think this is a good example. It was not until this person's death that it came to light, reportedly even to their spouse, that they were millions of dollars in debt. And despite this, kind of continue to live this lifestyle. And it sounded like there was this hope that this person had that they would make some deal that would kind of get them out of this hole. And I think it was like $32 million. I can't even fathom how that
huge amount.
happens. Yeah, it's a huge amount. And then recently there was another article that came out about this person's spouse, and now the spouse is being sued by several different companies that they had owed money to. So we wanted to talk today about, how this is, kind of presents itself. The idea of keeping up with the Joneses is not new. Like, this is not a new concept. I can remember in my own life exactly when I became aware of the fact that there was people out there, not just famous people, right? Like, we've always known there's famous people, like the rich and the famous, right?
Sure.
But I can tell you exactly the time in my life when I realized, like, oh, people like I grew up in a middle-class family. My parents worked, I ended up going to a public high school in a very prominent, well-off suburb of Chicago. And most of the people who went to that high school lived in that particular suburb and all went to middle school together and then fed into this high school. And then there were other districts, so other kind of neighboring suburbs, one of which I lived in, which were not as kind of affluent, that fed into it for high school. So not middle school, but for high school. And I remember like my first day of school there, and like we all kind of knew that this was the case, but I'm like walking, you're walking through the parking lot, and my older cousin went to school, and he had this like little hoopty that he used to drive us to school in. And these kids are all driving like BMWs and Mercedes. And I remember being like, oh, okay, there's this other life that I did not know existed, right? Like, I grew up riding the CTA, the Chicago Transit Authority, to school. But I think that this has been exacerbated completely by social media, right?
Absolutely.
So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. So I thought it would be good to start off with, asking a question to everyone here, and I myself will answer this. So how do you feel like you are most impacted by this? Like, this is, I thought, was a good way to start it. And I know for me personally, it can be anything from the things you see people are wearing, the way that they keep their lives, the vacations they go on, well-behaved children all the time, right? So like, it can really be any facet. So for me, I think the biggest one is like the buying things. Like, I have this, like, I can't tell you, my husband jokes around. He's like, oh my gosh, there's Amazon again at the house. I'm like, I know. And it's like, I feel like that's the biggest way that I'm impacted, is like seeing things, and being like, oh, I think I need that too, and that's just like one piece of this. Like we could have probably a whole podcast about like buying stuff you don't need, but like
Right.
just seeing it, right? That
Accurate.
I would say for
Accurate.
me is my biggest one. Like I don't really care too much about some of the other stuff that I see people doing. But for me, I think the way that I kind of get sucked into this is like the buying things, that's my thing. So how about you guys? What do you guys feel like is the way that it impacts you the most?
For me, it's home organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which
Mhm.
dovetails with buying of things, needing to acquire racks and shelves and organizational
Bins.
bins, seeing the big, it's so curated.
Mhm.
Social
Right.
media, everything's very curated. It seems to me that the keeping up with the Joneses with regard to home decor and organization
Mhm.
has
Mhm.
reached a fever pitch. And for
Yes.
me personally, it's the organization. I think my kitchen cabinets are organized, but then I see something on Instagram
Right.
and I
Right.
think, but they're not organized like that.
Right.
Mhm.
Maybe
Yep.
I need to regroup. And then your eyes you become desensitized to your house. And then sometimes you seem to look at it with fresh eyes. And you come
Right.
in and you look at your closet or your kid's bedroom and you think, oh, is this how this looks? And it's almost like you had blinders on and you go, this needs
Mhm.
to be organized differently. This could look so different. And for me personally, I think that is heavily influenced by what I am seeing with regard to home organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
I think that I would go right along with that. I was actually going to say home, I guess home decor and how my house looks. And it was something that I just sort of always thought I had my own style, thought it was whatever. And then it was definitely when we moved into our house now and into the area we are now,
Mhm.
where I was going into these other houses and I was like, whoa,
Right.
what the heck?
Mhm.
Oh, my house does not look like this.
Mhm.
And then I started looking around. I started buying things. I was like, okay, now this room looks better. Room looks better. But then I realized that never goes away. Like,
Right.
even when you're
Right.
you're like, okay, now this is great. Then you go into another house and you see something else, or you see something online and you're like, oh, but this is the new color, or this is the new
Yeah.
this is, and it's never. And then I realized, oh, you have to do all of this for yourself, and you have to
Yeah.
like your house, and you have to live in your house. And anyone that comes in my house and is like, oh, this doesn't look whatever, I guess I just have to be okay with that. But that's for sure. Like the fresh eyes thing, when I know I have people come over, depending on who they are, I will be looking at my house differently. Terry, you come
Right.
over, I'm like, yep,
Same.
that's good. Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
a sign of, but isn't that a sign of like who your friends really are? Because you
Right.
know that
It
like
is.
your two
Right.
friends could give two shits if your house,
Right.
how your house looks. Like,
Right.
right? That's not why they
Exactly.
like you. They like you
Right.
because you're who you are, right?
Yep.
Yes.
But I think because you see on social media like all the time, it's like it's full now. Like
Oh,
now
yeah.
I'm gonna change the whole decor, and I'm
Right.
like, really? Because I've had the same
Right.
pillows on my couch for the last 2 years.
Right.
So like I feel, yeah, you get sucked into. You're like,
There's
do I
a
need to do
false
that? Like,
pressure.
yes, like oh wait, it's fall. I got to change my
Mhm.
decor, right? And like,
Mhm.
yes, of course, like you can put
In
up your
every room
Halloween
of the
decor,
house.
right?
Mhm.
Well, and you
Right.
get served that, like it'll say right now, I have been served some different, not ads even, people that I follow that trust me, after this conversation, you start to think like, maybe I should hide those stories, those people, right? But
Mhm.
you get right now, they're saying you better buy this Christmas, this viral Christmas thing because it's going to be out of stock. It's out of stock by November. It's out of stock by October. It's like, really? Right.
Yeah.
So definitely the home presentation piece is a big one. The one that I was thinking of I think the consumerism piece, to your point, Vanessa, and how that goes in from like things like clothing and products and things like that, but also into our home and organization, as you guys were all saying. The one that I was thinking of related to my kids is the keeping up with the Joneses with regard to youth activities in sports.
Oh,
Ooh,
yes.
that's a big
Oh,
one.
that could be our own topic.
Oh,
I mean, good Lord.
For sure. And I'm sure there will be an appropriate jumping off board for another full podcast, full episode on it. But it's something that, it's really interesting. My husband and I are sort of focused right now on figuring out and helping our kids and supporting them and figuring out like doing one thing that you love, right? Outside of school. Right? School is the job. That's, where our primary focus is, but we also want them to kind of broaden their scope of activities and be able to enjoy something outside of school. But even doing that one thing and feeling like you're not doing enough because everybody else is doing 2 or 3 things, or within that one thing, are you doing these extra little things or getting all the newest technology and things for your child's sports? It's kind of crazy. And it brings up all of those keeping up with the Joneses feelings that you can really recognize, I think, either before or after you buy the product on social media, that's what's happening. But it's a little bit harder when it's happening in your, day-to-day as well. So it's kind of that pressure of both.
Is it?
Do you have, sorry, Terry, you go.
I was going to say your child wants to play basketball, for example.
Yep.
There's 3 travel leagues,
Oh my
2
God.
park district options.
Yeah.
In addition to that,
Private training.
skills camps, private training. And you land as a parent and you're looking at your partner. My 9-year-old says he wants to play basketball.
Right?
What are we supposed to do? Are we doing the right one? What if I think that one's okay, but my friend told me about the other one and I heard what they're doing, and that sounds like my kid would like that one better. How do you make the decision? It's decision fatigue. It's overwhelming. You don't know if you're making the right decision. There's no benchmarks to help guide that decision. It truly is you and your partner trying to work out based on your observations and chatting with your kid who's also uninformed.
And what your child needs.
Right.
What your child needs.
And I think,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the hard part about all of this is that it's how it's impacting you, right? Like financially, right? You're dishing out for the thing that you think you need for the lesson, right? Oh, I need to get the private lesson, whatever it is. And then how it makes you feel too, right? That's the other negative part about it, right? Like this is making me feel anxious. This is making me feel depressed, right? Like, and obviously that's, there's different levels of how this impacts you, but that certainly can happen. That financial impact, that social emotional impact. And that's where the negative part comes in, right? If it was just that, like, oh, I bought this, whatever, that's one thing, but it's like, you're spending all this money, you're feeling a certain way.
Having to put it somewhere if you bought a thing, or have to carve out the time in a schedule
Staring
you probably
you in the
don't have.
face.
Yes, you don't have the time for. Brene Brown, I saw her being interviewed a while back, and she was talking about how you make those decisions. And she said, in my family, we are a family-focused family, meaning we make decisions based on all of the family's needs. So you have parent-focused families, kid-focused families, and family-focused families. So she said, we tell our kids they can do one sport, because anything more than that will pull away from the family and the family's needs. Because my husband works, Brene, of course, works. And she said, we have to take all of our needs into account. And I love that bar as which family are you and where do you put your needs, and then making decisions based on those needs.
Well, and that one activity per child nowadays looks very different than it used to.
Absolutely.
And I do think, while the keeping up with the Joneses thing isn't new, there are a lot, and I think Vanessa or Terry said earlier, it's the awareness. It's right in our face, right? Whether it's about decision making for our kids and that decision fatigue, or decision making for ourselves and the consumerism that impacts us from like the products and things that we're buying. It's just right there, and it's so hard. Even if you are saying, and Wilhelmina, I think you make an excellent point, and we try to follow this as a family of we are a family focused family. It's really challenging. You feel those pressures all around us of how to make the right choices for, yourself, your home, your family, right? I was looking up an article, and Vanessa, you had said it's linked to depression and lower self-esteem. But the reason that it continues is because it gives us that initial increase in
Dopamine.
self-esteem. Yep.
Oh,
It's
Just
like that
screen
little
time.
tiny temporary dopamine kick, right?
Yeah, don't you feel good when UPS shows up at your front
Yeah.
door and
Oh
like
my
you're like,
God,
you
so
remember
Love
when?
it.
this is going to change my life, right? Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it's gone. And they said also that credit card debt globally
Oh,
is at its highest
Yes,
from
I
this type
believe
of
that.
kind of behavior,
Yeah,
right?
I was
believe
actually
that.
looking up all of debt, and like, I didn't think it was that high. Like, to be honest, like I thought it was going to be much more, like
Yeah.
just the average debt per American. But this included like mortgage debt, student loan, credit
Yeah.
card, auto loan. So, but what I did read and what I thought was the interesting part about it wasn't even actually the number, except that it's the trend right now is reflecting like a growing reliance on debt. Like that to me,
Yes.
like the
Mhm.
piece
Yes.
was that. Forget the number. The reality is right now we're showing trending that we're using more and more credit. Like, right? Like we're
Yeah.
more and more debt. So if you're using your credit card, you're putting yourself in debt. And so
Right.
that is the scary piece, is like, where is this going? Because I don't think we've actually even hit the height of what could happen.
I
This
think you're probably right.
this makes me all think of the phenomenon or concept of arrival fallacy, or the arrival
Yes.
fallacy, where you feel, it's a
Mhm.
social psychology phenomenon, where once
get
I
there in a
arrive
moment.
at
Mhm.
said destination, whether
Yep.
that is home decor, dining room is finished, kids
Yep.
have completed 2 rounds of travel, whatever,
How I
Yep.
look.
how
right?
I look,
Yep. Yeah.
fill in the
Yep.
blank. Once I finish college, once I finish graduate school, once I'm married,
Right.
once I have a kid, once I have 2 kids, once
Right.
I move to that
Yep.
neighborhood, once I get that house, once
Once I
my
have the practice, once I,
Yeah.
once
Yep.
I arrive, whatever that destination is, I will feel content, settled. Some people probably tell themselves they'll feel happy. And
Yeah.
it is a fallacy by definition. And
Yep.
a lot of people, all of us included, that is how the human
Yep.
brain operates and is designed to work, abide to that and fall under that. And I
Yeah.
think that social media, again, has just amplified that. And
Of course.
our availability to see, for example, Wilhelmina, you not only are able to see your good friends' homes and your neighbors' homes in your
Right.
community, you are able to see into 100 people's homes within
Mhm.
10 minutes
Yes.
Mhm.
Right.
in the device
Yeah.
in your hand. And that makes it
Yeah.
really challenging. And so determining what arrival looks like for you, knowing that you're not going to feel more content, right? Emotions are like the weather.
Yeah.
They're always
Right.
going to change.
Yep. Yep.
So I think that's a big piece when I think of all this, is that arrival fallacy.
Well, and when I was looking at some of the research on this, I mean, the answer is really simple. It's as simple as it is hard, right? Like we have to do the hard thing, which is stop looking outside,
Yep.
right? And look inside. But there's a whole bunch of research that shows that just being appreciative and grateful for the
Yes.
things
I
that
was
we
gonna say
already
grateful.
have.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so they talk about doing your, like a gratitude exercise every day. If like
Yep.
if you're gonna actively pull yourself away from this being this consuming your life, to really just, when you pull yourself away from it, to just look at like, what does my life look like right now, and what am I really grateful for right now?
Being able to
Um,
find that thing. And sometimes
mhm.
it's hard. Like when you're having a shit ass day,
Right.
you got to dig real deep sometimes. And sometimes it
Right.
has to be something so like, just like on the outside, right? Like,
Yeah.
I am healthy and I have 2 legs and I can walk, right? Like sometimes you
Right.
just have to go that basic
Yeah.
in your life, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just like, it's hard.
Yeah.
Like when the shitstorm, you're in the middle of the shitstorm, right? Like it's
Yeah.
hard sometimes to be like, oh, because everything feels like it's wrong. But if you can just take a step back and be like, okay, there's something that I can find that's happening in my life.
That's
A
good.
person, myself
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah.
It's just a good way to pull yourself out of that, negative headspace, basically.
Yeah.
And I do this with my patients a lot when we talk about gratitude, because I'll mention, write down some things
Yep.
that you're grateful for. And they kind of roll their eyes. I'm like, I know. But I explain that when you are really looking at what you're grateful for, you have to be very specific. So if
Yeah.
you're writing these things down, don't just say, my house, my kids, my pet. Say, I am grateful that today my husband unloaded the dishwasher. That was
Yep.
awesome. I am grateful that I had a warm cup of coffee this morning. I am
Right.
grateful that the weather. Be very specific, because that will actually have you be practicing that in your head, and you'll start to notice that throughout the day. If the more you practice it, you are starting to record in the moment those gratitudes. So being
building positive bridges.
yes,
With more, yeah.
yes,
Right.
That reminds me of the idea of framing situations in everyday life, even simple tasks, even things that you felt like you were dreading, and framing it as I get to instead of I
get
have
to.
to.
It's that positive
Mhm.
reframe.
Yes,
Yeah.
I get to pick up my kids from school. I get to take them to
Yes.
practice right after.
Right. Right.
And that is
Right.
hard to do.
I get to have
Right.
them take a shower. It also makes me
Yeah.
think of the
Right.
phrase "pray for what you already have,"
Right.
Yep.
Mhm. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I like.
Yeah.
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 I get
Yeah.
to do bedtime. I will just keep saying it. I will
Right.
keep saying it and hope it makes it feel better.
Right.
I
Yes.
get to write reports.
But we all,
Ooh,
but right.
ooh,
I don't know
that's a
about
tough one. Reports
Right.
reports are a tough one.
But we all know it works, right? I mean, I think that I can safely say that we all try really hard to practice what we preach.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it does induce rolling of the eyes, Wilhelmina. Every
It does.
time I say this
Yeah.
to a client, they kind of look at you like, "Oh my
Oh,
god."
yeah.
I know.
I mean, don't we roll our eyes at ourselves when we do
Yes.
this ourselves? Like, I mean,
Yes.
even when I
We
say
do.
it to myself, I'm like I
Yeah.
have been saying this
Yeah.
mantra out loud, and my daughter Everly's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I can do hard things. I can do
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
walk around the house
Yeah.
like when I'm having like a shitty day, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I can do hard things. I
Yeah.
can do hard things.
Yes.
Like, what are you talking about? I was like, I'm I'm being my own cheerleader here. Like
Yeah.
I'm you're trying to stay positive. I can do hard things.
And that's a
'Cause you can.
twofer because you're modeling for your daughter and
Yes.
you're
Yes.
providing that
Yes.
for yourself.
Yes.
twofer.
Yes. Yes.
Look at me being super mom. But I think people forget that what they're seeing on social media, and even like in our daily lives. So like we know social media is like, they're posting their best snippet, they're posting
Yeah,
their
of
best
course.
photo, but even in our daily lives, like, my husband and I, we have one child. And so, we both do well. We're fortunate that, we can send her to a really nice private school. There's definitely, families there who are way better off than we are, well off. But my husband said something to me one day, and I was like, oh, that's such a good point. And he's a finance guy, so he would be the one. He was like, that person driving that nice car, have that nice car, that nice home, that nice car. He's like, you have no idea how much debt they could be in.
Mhm.
Right.
And like, we just assume like
Absolutely.
if you're driving this fancy car and you have this big house,
Absolutely.
that like you're like, oh
Your
my gosh,
life
you
is
must be
perfect.
so well off. You
Mhm.
must be so perfect, right? And that's not the case. He's like, so many people are in debt because they want to look a certain way, like the article that I mentioned, like this guy, obviously was wanting to like live a very specific type of lifestyle,
Yeah.
to get yourself $32 million in debt, right? And obviously that's not the norm, but people could still be in debt to some other degree, right? And we wouldn't know it because we just assume, oh, well, if you're driving that's your house, you must have that.
You had
right?
the cash to pay for it. My mom's a retired mortgage risk analyst, and she says the exact same thing. I think anyone who
Huh?
works in the finance realm knows
Yeah.
that. They see it so frequently on a regular
Yeah.
basis. And I think you're right. You just never know. People aren't buying their new Tesla with cash, full cash, right?
Most people, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Most people
Right.
aren't, but our
Yeah,
brain
most are.
goes, oh, well, they probably wouldn't have bought that unless they could afford to.
Exactly. Right.
But
That's
that's not
not
the
financially
case.
responsible people.
Well,
So,
and even equating financial wealth, right? Financials with happiness, like
Yeah.
satisfaction, all of
that too.
those things. It's like
That's the real
they can
kicker there.
have all of those things, and that we have no idea what goes
Right.
what goes on behind closed doors, as this article points out, right? But I think we've all seen those cases in our lives as well. As everything can look really white picket fence, picture perfect,
Right.
but everybody's got their stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it's figuring out like, how do I pull myself away from that keeping up with the Joneses effect, and really make sure it's like what I need, what my spouse needs, what my family needs, what my family and friends need on a larger level, right? And not get caught up in that phenomenon. It's
Yeah,
hard.
I think, we've talked about social media in our last, podcast, and, about limiting that just because of the negative effects kind of just in general. But I
Yeah.
think that applies to this as well, in the sense that if you're feeling like I'm overspending on things, or
Yeah.
I'm unhappy because I keep looking at these things, then really the answer is, which is hard, right, is to not look at those things, maybe
Right.
limiting it at least
Right.
to, a certain amount. Or if like, I know there's certain like, influencers that I follow who are really good at being like, you probably don't need this shit, so like don't buy, right? Like they're just really good at that. And others I think are less so. And so, maybe choosing the people that you're following that you feel are like not pushing things on you, who are genuinely like, a friend, just kind of like, hey, if you're looking for something in this, like if you're looking for a new suitcase, here's one that I would recommend, sort of thing, rather than feeling like it's just like push, 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 push. So, limiting or just taking a break. Like Terry, you mentioned, and you've told us a bunch of times that you just like take these breaks from social media. And if it's your inner circle or like the people you're around, right? Like you necessarily like move your home if that's the kind of neighborhood you live in, whatever. But like certainly like if you're around people who are kind of, I'm going to use the word toxic, right? Like, and you're feeling like this is something that, they're into, or you're feeling a certain way, then maybe that's time to kind of reassess.
Like, why am I
who you're
spending my
hanging
time with these
time
people?
with these
Yes.
people, right? Or
Yes.
again, limiting, because like in some situations you can't totally remove yourself, right? Like,
Right.
but you can at least say like, you know what? I think I'm going to limit my time with this person or these people, and really focus on spending my time with people that make me feel good, right? That make me
that fill my cup.
that fill my cup, that I feel like
Yep.
I relate to, right? Like I don't feel like I have to be like, oh, look at this or here, sort of thing. And we all know people like that, right? You can tell, you can from a mile away, it's like, so just reassessing, who you're with and what you're seeing, what you're doing, I think can help a lot with some of the things that we're talking about today.
Well, and
Absolutely.
I don't know if you guys, when was this? The big Nordstrom's annual sale and all the influencers that would push all of that. And I remember getting like frenzied about like, oh, well, I need this and I need that. And I was definitely overspending on clothes. And then I'm trying to find space for the clothes. And I mean, I have a clothes problem for sure. And finally I was like, I can't even be following this. So I muted or unfollowed all of those people. And I will tell you, it has made such a difference. Like I haven't missed
freedom.
it.
Yeah.
Yes. And now when I like feel like, oh, I need new pants, I'll maybe send you gals a text. Like, what are you liking? I'll maybe start to look for pants that I like. But that's a very directed type of thing versus like always just getting inundated with things I don't actually need.
Yeah.
Right. And it feels more within your control.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I started doing this, and I told my daughter, and then now she's kind of taken it to this, but I actually had a friend way back when I lived back home in Chicago that used to do this. Anytime she'd buy something new, she would get rid of something she had.
Oh,
so,
you were telling us about
one
this.
in, one out.
Like for
Brilliant.
years, like, I mean, when I tell you, this was like, I met her in the 90s. Like she was doing this way before like, social media.
Trendy.
Hey Ariel. So I came home and I was like, I think I need to start doing this, because I feel like I'm buying too much stuff and I don't need all this stuff. And then I have all this stuff in my closet. So I told my daughter, I was like, I think from now on, the rule will be like, if you get a new toy, because she also doesn't want to get rid of her old toys that she's not playing with. So I'm like, if we get a new toy, we need to get rid of an old toy. And same for mom. But then she kind of took it to the extreme, and like, I think I bought like shampoo or something. And she's like, Mom, we got to get, I was like, okay, wait a second. This is not, we're not going to do this for
There are exceptions.
Products. There's going to be exceptions.
Right.
So this is just like new toy, like things that we don't need, but just things that we would like, that we want. Right. And so for those things we have to. So like, I'm trying to do that as best as I can, to kind of not then have, so much stuff. And it helps you reassess, like, do I really need this? Right. And what am I willing to get rid of if I'm saying that I do need this? So I think it can be helpful.
I remember when my kids were really little babies, maybe my oldest was a baby, and somebody had mentioned that, oh, when your kid's older, do one in, one out. And I remember thinking, that's a great idea. And I think about it maybe once a year. I've never done it. I regret that we've never done it. I wished we had.
Yeah.
We can start today.
Oh no,
probably.
toothpaste is not out of the tube. You can.
You
We
can.
can.
Do
But
it.
I'm 9 years in. I wish that we had been in that mode starting earlier when they were toddlers or, 4 or 5 years old. Because what's interesting though, as I'm thinking out loud, the fact that I don't think of it very frequently, because we're so inundated with stuff.
Yes.
And everything that we're being exposed to, nobody's doing one in, one out. It's just
Right.
all
This is
in,
the
everything
More.
This is
in.
the
More.
perfect timing.
More.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the perfect time of year, though. Every year,
Yes.
so I don't do the one in, one out, but every single year we go through before the holidays and try to clean out closets, clean out toy chests, like all of that
Same.
kind of stuff, and donate it.
Yep.
And that's a good way of kind of paring things down and recognizing, like, oh, I didn't actually need all of these things. But I mean,
Yeah, we do
it's
that
easier
too, but
said than done. It's hard.
yeah. We do that too, but I feel like the one in, one out helps you in that moment, right? Like in
Right.
that
It's
moment,
hard
it's like,
on a day to day.
do I
So
really
that's a
need
good.
this?
Yep.
And what am I willing to give? Yeah. And
You got
I
it.
wasn't very good with the toys thing, you know, and I basically told her, I was like, if we don't have room for anything else.
Right.
It came down. I'm like, all the toy drawers are full, all the closets are full.
That's us with stuffed
Like-
animals.
Like,
Too many.
so, yes. And I'm like, all right, so if
We
this
are
is
done.
what we're going to do, this is how we, so I think that's a nice way for anyone who's like, well, how do
Yeah.
I kind of like institute this rule now? Is you can say like, we're running out of space.
We're
So
at
this
full
is what we're going to
capacity.
do. We're at full capacity. So here's how
We've
we're going to
reached our
like, you know,
limit.
regulate
Yeah.
that. So yeah. And
Oh.
again, easier said than done, but
Yep.
I think it's a nice concept.
Owen
Yeah.
jokes that I need to do that with shoes. And I'm like, you're right. I do. I get a new pair of shoes. And he's like, what's going on? I'm like,
You
don't
are
touch the shoes.
correct.
Don't touch the shoes. The shoes.
Yeah.
He's like, how's that going for you? I'm like, not well. Not well.
Totally easier said than done. I think I think I
Exactly.
still have a pair of heels that I wore to my bachelorette party, and I wore them once because they were white, and
Oh, yeah.
I never wore them again. And they're
Huh?
still in my closet because I'm like, well, maybe one day.
Sentimental.
You
value,
never
right?
need
You're right.
six-
I have my
inch
Doc
white
Martens
heels.
from high school. Doc Martens from high school. A box of Doc Martens from high school, which they are back, but they're different.
But they're
so they're
different
not
now.
even the same.
They're
They're
not really
different.
back.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to share about today's topic?
I think we're
No.
All
good.
right, so now that we're at the end of today's podcast, I just want a reminder to everyone listening, please know that who you are and what you are is enough. Like that's just, I think, a
Mhm.
hard thing to do,
Yeah.
but just know that if you're feeling that social media is having a negative impact, limit your time on it or even take a break like we mentioned. If the people in your life are making you feel like this, then it's probably time to reassess your friend group. We also want to highlight the importance of seeking help if you are feeling anxious or depressed or having any kind of, feeling that that's not healthy, right? Your primary care provider is always a good resource to find someone to talk to. Psychology Today is also another one. It's an online,
Yep.
you can go on, you just type in where you live and it'll give you a list of psychologists and counselors in your area. You can also
Put your insurance in there.
Yep.
Mhm.
And then you can even contact your insurance provider too and get a list of folks who are in network if you're trying to use insurance. I will say be sure to find someone who's practicing evidence-based interventions like CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. I say that because I know when I've talked to people, they're like, oh, how do you know who's a good person and who's not? So I think that's just one way to kind of help. Word of mouth is also really good. Also, if you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, please call or text the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. So that's a good way to remember it. You can also find more information about the services offered at 988lifeline.org. They offer services 24/7, 365 days a year. And if you're feeling that you're like in immediate danger, you can also kind of call 911. That's another one. Just remember, please don't hesitate to seek help. You're not alone, and there are people out there ready to support you. We know this because we are psychologists, so just sharing that with you. So thank you so much for listening today. We hope that you will join us again for our next episode. We'll surprise you with that. Don't forget to also follow us on our new Instagram page. Wilhelmina is our new official social media manager. So please come find us there and follow us there. And then also, if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us. All right. Thank you so much.